Welcome back to the Gruber Company's morning show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome to Tuesday's show.
What we have for you as a backdrop today, except for Instagram, by the way, I just found out that Sunday we were actually able to stream Instagram and create a green screen background, but the optics somehow were off kilter, and the frame or the way we were streaming put my face almost covering the entire screen. So we have some focusing, something that we need to solve yet.
Well, we'll get it down. Although, yeah, that would be a great big face, huh?
Yeah, but we're close today. Instagram will still have green screen. Any of you wanting the full experience, feel free to go over to YouTube, and you can see the screen, which is today, by the way, another AI rendering. And what I asked it to do today, the prompt is, add it up here. Let's see. Go. A brightly lit news studio on top of Mount Kilimanjaro with breathtaking 270-degree views. And what we ended up with was what looked like a rich guy's living room up on top of a mountain, above the clouds even, and with some cool camera equipment that's off kind of in the middle there. We can't make out what that is. But then there's a gigantic mountain off in the distance. And Mark, you were saying that's not Kilimanjaro?
I don't think that would be Kilimanjaro because Kilimanjaro is I call it a solo mountain. It's an old volcano and it did not have multiple peaks.
Okay. But it's fascinating always for us what AI can render and conjure up and hallucinate at times. But
I do love the look and feel of that room, though. That looks just like a retreat that you go to just to, get yourself,
chill.
Get your mind right and chill.
Yeah. That one we had last week was also interesting. The tropical one where the sun was setting, and I liked it so much I made it my screensaver. Looks like YouTube. Nolliver53 is joining us. Welcome. He says, good morning, gents.
Good morning.
So one of the things that we can start with today, apparently, here's the headline. Tesla is sending shockwaves through the auto industry as intrigue around its $25,000 mystery model continues to build. So it looks like the speculation currently is that this is going to be a vehicle that looks like a bit like the Model Y, except smaller. And it may again be a game changer in the world of electric cars, because if they can actually attain a $25,000 price target, that's going to put us below ICE. What were you saying the ICE vehicle price is currently?
Yeah, I looked up the compact car price in July of 2023. Average new car price for a compact car is $26,500 roughly.
Okay.
And so that means that this 25K price point would actually be a below average price for an electric vehicle. And if it had 250 to 300 miles of range, that would be pretty amazing. I think of Volvo, the audience knows I own a Volvo XC40, and Volvo is coming out with a smaller car called the EX30 that's generating a tremendous amount of buzz because that's going to be Volvo's entry into this 25,000 or sub 25,000 market. I like the take that Brooke Crothers, who is a contributor for Forbes, had in an article that came out just yesterday. I think it was kind of a response to this, in fact. The combination of the Model 3, she says, and the federal tax incentive that's out there puts the Model 3 into this price range already. And so it's very likely, because Tesla is so focused right now on the Model 3 and on the Cybertruck rollout, that the Model 3, at least in the short term, is probably that $25,000 car. Jesse, if you could pull up a screenshot or an image that's called Model 3 price. This is a screenshot that I took about a half hour ago on Tesla's site for what it would take to buy a Model 3. And you'll see right in the very center of that screen, it says Model 3 from $29,740. So that's about $3,000 higher than the mid-range of the compact car size, and puts it about the same price as some of the more expensive compact cars like the Honda Civic, like the I
It'll
just
come
lost
to
it.
you. I do that.
That little British car that's so cute.
Are we talking about a Mini?
Yeah, Cooper Mini.
Cooper Mini, okay.
There you go,
Yeah,
the
or
Cooper Mini.
Cooper.
Those cars come in around $30,000 right now. The ICE vehicle version of them,
Right.
or the Toyota Corolla comes in at about that. So that's where the Model 3 is at right now. Lithium battery prices are continuing to fall. I know we're going to get more into that later today.
Mm-hmm.
China production of lithium battery prices continues to go up, which is going to continue the downward pressure. So it may be that Tesla kind of already has that with the Model 3 and the Model 3 Highland coming out, with the Cybertruck coming out as well. Although I think in a couple years, a simpler, smaller, compact Model Y kind of look would be a cool thing, and I think it's probably going to come out.
Cool. Well, actually, Elon first announced this $25,000 electric car, that it was on the horizon at the Tesla Battery Day in 2020, so 3 years ago or so. And he revealed that this cheaper price is going to be made possible thanks to a new kind of battery that Tesla was developing that could reduce battery costs by over 50%. Well, it turns out that special battery that he was referring to was later released as the 4680 batteries, which are named for their 46 millimeter width by 80 millimeter dimension. So that would allow Tesla to produce and sell cars for $25,000, they felt, and they would also be able to provide 250 to 300 miles range on a single charge. In March of this year, Car and Driver released a list of the top 10 cheapest electric cars, which ranged from $27,400 to $42,000. And the driving range of these cars was listed anywhere between 100 and 270 miles. Of the 3 cars on the list that cost under $30,000, only one had a range of over 250 miles, and not by much, apparently. So other manufacturers, they say, like Hyundai and Ford, currently have announced no plans to introduce a lower-end EV, choosing instead to concentrate on larger vehicles with wider profit margins, according to CNBC, which, of course, is important because these guys are they're still in a cash drain situation, and they need to get their profitability up before they can dive into these niche vehicles. They say that Tesla's goal is to manufacture, now get this, 4 million of these $25,000 cars. And what we've all been waiting for, of course, is that might just be the tipping point when there's finally an EV that is less expensive than an inexpensive ICE vehicle, and that's going to bring in a whole batch of new people into transportation that really aren't focused on going green or saving the planet, but they're looking at their wallet and saying, what can I, how can I get transportation that is reasonably priced?
Well, if you remember, California, I believe, has an EV incentive over and above what the federal incentive is. And with that EV incentive combined with the federal incentive, it's possible to get into a Model 3 today for less than that $25,000 for people who are in California. Although I know we don't have the full article to talk about it today, the uptake of electric vehicles in the second quarter of this year for California is 22%.
Really, that much?
Yeah, if we've talked in the past about that tipping point being somewhere between 5 and 7%, 22% tells me that California may have reached and finally got over that tipping point into mass adoption. And if they have got it on green stuff, EV stuff like that, California tends to lead the United States, and there are many other states and areas that tend to follow. It could be that we are now reaching that tipping point finally.
That would be wonderful. They say that if EVs are made more available to the masses, which, the masses generally find EVs to be unaffordable, that at least is the stigma, it could have a huge impact on local air quality and the environment as a whole. They say that the typical passenger vehicle, ICE of course, produces about 5.1 tons, over 10,000 pounds of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere every year. Well, you take 4 million of those off the road in the first year. That would just, create, or that would be a huge impact.
That would be a huge impact. I mean, if you think back to the days of what our atmosphere looked like when everything was shut down for the pandemic, that's what you're talking about potentially going back to, just that we're not in pandemic. It's people that are using zero emission cars.
Those of us that went through it, it was a once in a lifetime experience, I think. And it was a historical event. It really was. None of us had anticipated it or ever seen anything like that. I mean, we live in Phoenix here, mind you, and we're in the Valley of the Sun. The valley is kind of like a pot where you tend to collect all of your pollution. And it's somewhat held in by some mountain ranges around us. But on any given day, you couldn't see very well, and certainly not South Mountain from where I live. But during the pandemic, it was amazing. It was crystal clear.
Yeah, and it kind of put to bed the debate that had been raging for a few years up to that time of, will pulling a bunch of cars off the road actually make that much of a difference?
Yeah. Exactly. There was a lot of debate. You're right.
Up until that point, there was a lot of debate. After that point, after everything was shut down for a little while and people saw exactly how clear and beautiful things were, not just here in Phoenix, but across the country. The Los Angeles basin was much the same thing. Los Angeles is in this basin surrounded by mountains, smog all the time, and it was crystal clear. So that kind of put the silence to that debate. It settled that debate once and for all.
And I'm not aware of any studies, and this would have been a great time to do that, but studies that would begin to measure the amount of respiratory ailments or improvements during that time. Of course, everybody was focused on, I don't want to die with the pandemic. I don't want to get COVID. And but yeah, that would have been an interesting study. I'm not sure you can do that retroactively, though.
Not sure if you can do that retroactively or not. That'd be a hard one, because with COVID being a respiratory ailment, there would be so much data pollution of what COVID is versus what other respiratory ailments would be.
Yeah.
That'd be really hard to do.
I just realized we have a...
About to tell you, we should have done that top of the show. We got a new team member over here.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, yes. 5
social media people, well, including ourselves anyway. Like to introduce Cass to the team. Is there a camera that we can train on her? We're going to try that here. There we go.
Hi.
Hi, Cass.
Welcome, Cass.
Thanks.
Looking forward to having her join us and continue the momentum that we're gaining with the social media and... some of the things we're doing with these podcasts. YouTube Exploration says hello from Missouri. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon to you. And YouTube, Brian Silver has a question for us. He says, with the move to large aluminum castings, what are the prospects for repairing collision damage? I hear they are designing bolt-on retrofit parts for the castings, and will the Tesla alloy aluminum cast metal be weld repairable?
Those are things that we have not dived into yet. Again, we're the people that are working on out of warranty stuff, and we're not going to see any castings for quite some time. But there's, of course, a huge discussion right now about some of these cracks that are appearing in the aluminum castings. And the response from Tesla is that it's within spec. Of course, that's going to be debated endlessly, but I can share this with you. We had a Model 3 in the service center yesterday that had a blown air shock, and I was looking at the top of the shock tower, and it was a casting. It was an aluminum casting, and I looked for a moment and I said, "Is it possible there's a crack here?" And it certainly looked like it. So I went to the other side where there was no issue with that shock, and it had the same sort of line. So we dug a little bit, looked at it more carefully, got a magnifying glass basically, and it turns out that was a part of the casting that looked like a seam that had come together.
Okay.
And it was not, it did not penetrate. In other words, it was not a crack.
Well, you've had some experience with the aluminum castings a little bit, because the I know we've had to do some drivetrain repairs or motor mount repairs, basically, on the Tesla Model S.
Yeah.
And you have to drop that subframe and have had to do some welding on some of those subframes as well in order to re-strengthen and repair them.
Yeah, you're right. The portions that we work on, though, are extrusions rather than casting.
Oh, okay.
And I believe that gives it much greater strength. There's like a 3-inch by 3-inch type bar, extruded bar on the bottom, to which these little 90-degree motor mounts are then welded onto. And but there are portions in that drivetrain or the motor housing that are casting.
Okay.
Now the question that was posed here was, what will happen during a collision? Is it going to be more expensive because a large piece now needs to be replaced? Probably. And will welding be one of the solutions to doing repairs on cast aluminum? Well, I'm going to let people chime in here because we are not experts in at least casting type welding. I'm not. Let me put it that way. I bet you Chaz knows this stuff. Yeah,
I'll bet he does.
We need him on our podcast.
Yeah, he's the guy
Sandy
that leads
did.
our machine shop.
Yeah.
And he just had a video on this yesterday. If our audience wants to go check it out, they did a 16-pound sledgehammer smash test on the new aluminum castings versus the old steel or something like that. And he was demonstrating a bunch of the stuff on it. So it's about a 20-minute video you can watch on Sandy on Monroe Live.
In fact, Niles from the Bion Danish Genome Institute does weigh in on that exact thing.
Okay.
He says, good morning. He says, Monroe showed the Tesla aluminum casts deform much less with a sledgehammer than welded iron does. He concluded that the aluma casts were better, but it does mean but it means crashes will deform much more of the car? Question.
Okay. We're getting some interesting comments on this. I don't know that either. Yeah.
That's something that we're going to have to see if we can find out more information about. So we'll try to do that.
And, this is where Sandy's team really shines, is doing the deep dive into the metallurgical processes and the strengths of that type of material, the upsides and downsides of casting versus extrusion versus different types of metal. So that's probably a good video to watch.
Yeah.
And you say it was released yesterday, Jesse?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was yesterday afternoon, I think, and he did a couple of smash tests on it. He's very big proponent of the aluminum
The casting?
casting instead of the old school.
Well, he went to Italy. He went to IDRA and actually saw the process, saw the machinery, and it's Monroe Live, by the way, on YouTube for those of you unfamiliar. Facebook, Badon Saha says, watching now from Bangladesh. Well, thank you for joining us.
Oh, good evening to you. It's probably late evening in Bangladesh. Michael Aldea on YouTube sent us a waving hand emoji. So good morning, Michael.
Yes, how are you doing, Michael? We've got tomorrow for the Roadster podcast, we've got some interesting updates. We'll be talking a bit about the battery pack that Marco Nolte is developing in Germany. The Roadster battery pack. We'll have some updates with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then also some updates with Tesla, where the service centers are that can service Tesla Roadsters, which ones can do battery replacements, how to get yourself in queue for the battery replacement. So good Roadster stuff happening tomorrow if you can join us, Michael. Facebook, Mike Corkery says, fully charged San Diego 2023, hell yeah. All right. And then YouTube Nulvers 53 says, if you drive Interstate 8 heading from Arizona to San Diego, just before you start driving up the mountains, there's a massive solar farm. Who runs these and where is that power being supplied to? I'm familiar with a wind farm in that neck of the woods, but they must have put up a solar farm.
I've seen that solar farm as well, and I think that's Arizona Public Service that owns that particular solar farm. Regardless, there are two main utilities in Arizona, Arizona Public Service and Salt River Project. Regardless of which of those two own that particular solar farm, it is power that comes into the Phoenix metro area as green power.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that's that stretch of the I-8 where you consume a lot of power in an EV going up, and then once you start going down, you'll go 10 miles without using any mileage on your car. It's because the regen kicks in and continues to charge your battery.
That's right. It's I rode that stretch on bicycle several years ago.
You're kidding.
No, not kidding. We went. It was a 3-day ride from Phoenix. Day 1 to Gila Bend. Day 2 over to Weldon, which is just west of the Yuma Mountains.
Yeah.
And then day 3 over through Yuma down into San Luis. And you're right. That on that day 2 ride, you don't really realize it, but about 80% of it is just uphill, and it's a very, very gentle grade. But on something low power like a human powered bicycle, you really, really feel it all day long.
Yeah, yeah. All right. It looks like Niles is chiming in regarding the Munro video. He says, well, I think Munro might have made the wrong conclusion. Yeah, we'll have to watch that video. That sounds like...
We'll watch that, and we'd like to hear Niles a little bit more on why you think he may have made the wrong conclusion, just to educate everybody.
Instagram, Sishan433 Ahmed says, hi. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us. TikTok, Bill Wood. Fun fact, I just got home from Don Garrett's Race Museum with my MD X Model X and had 1 mile of electricity left. That is a fun fact and a scary fact. Hate that range anxiety stuff. And you know, you're never sure if it says 1 mile, is that really it? You know?
I know. I had one experience. Do you remember the white Model S that we have that had a battery that tended to drop mileage faster than the meter? We had a couple guys on a sales call, had it charged up, and they ran out of juice. I took a trip down to Mesa, it was about 40 miles away from where I lived at the time. And on my way back, the car went from 19 miles to pull over. You don't have power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what did you do?
We pulled over and walked home.
Walked home.
We were about a half a mile from home. My wife was less than pleased.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
But we got Peter to come out, and he did a reset on the car, and suddenly it had about 30 miles again on it. And we then got it home and got it charging.
Those software guys work miracles sometimes, don't they?
Oh, they do. They do.
Of course, your other options are get a flatbed, have it towed to a supercharger, or a mobile capability, which actually we're thinking about. We just bought a generator, a 4,000-watt generator.
Yes.
And we thought, well, what if we put that into one of the Model S's, and when one of our customers runs out of juice, we simply go out there and fire up that generator and, you know, give them some mileage back so they can get to a charging station. YouTube, Nolver53 says, I saw Sandy's video with Pete. Sandy wasn't wearing sunglasses. And you know what? I think we asked him, but he had left them. In the first video we did with him, he had sunglasses.
Yeah, no, he did it on our show. He didn't do it when you were on his show.
That's what it is. Okay.
Right.
It's probably because on his show, he doesn't have the same bright lights. He doesn't have the AI influence and all the other things that require us to wear sunglasses, which we can't go into, of course.
And of course, the one deep secret that we have about sunglasses that we're not going to reveal just yet.
Yes. Coming soon. All right, another item. DHL Express in Ireland is going green with 44 Ford E-Transit vehicles. And this apparently has been successfully established, and the charging infrastructure has also been installed in Ireland to service these vehicles. And apparently they have a pre-planned route that they take, and they made sure that they have the charging capability. And they've deployed 44 of these now to help reduce the emissions in Ireland.
I think it's a great idea. I loved reading that DHL is going to commit like $7 billion to make themselves green over the next several years.
Wow.
So this is the first, and I'm sorry, not $7 billion, it's 7 billion euros, which in US dollars is about $7.5 billion through 2030 in order to make sure to clean up their operations and try to go completely green. Now, Ford builds this van, this e-transit van, in the same plant that they build the Ford Lightnings.
Really? Okay. Smart move, yeah.
Definitely.
YouTube, Niles is saying, because harder structure means damage propagates further, makes sense, and one cannot use a hammer to tell what a crash with much more punch does. Good point. Yeah, it'd be difficult to replicate the variations that you would get in a collision.
Yeah, as always, excellent points. I'd be interested to see if the National Highway Transportation Safety Board or the IISSB,
Something like that. Yeah.
IIHS, Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Here in the States, they do crash tests on all cars and they give ratings to them. I don't know if any of these new Tesla models have been crash tested yet.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be newsworthy when it comes out.
Seems like that would be a requirement. Yeah. All right. Another item that we have here is regarding Tesla's Dojo supercomputer, which of course was designed to train AI models for autonomous vehicles. And according to Morgan Stanley, they made an estimate that with Tesla now developing this Dojo computer, it has the potential to increase its market capitalization by $600 billion, equating to a 76% surge. Now, of course, Mark wasn't going to let this information just simply rest. He did a deep dive and said, what are they talking about and is it real?
Absolutely. First, the Dojo computer is a brand new computer. It has just gone online in July of this year.
Mm-hmm.
So very, very little is known about it. Tesla owns everything about the computer. They've done all the programming themselves. All the staff are employees. So they have controlled this process from beginning to end. I took some time then to look at the overall artificial intelligence market worldwide, where it's at, where it's going. I figured that might give us a little bit of an analog for, is $600 billion of increase in value over the next 12 to 18 months reasonable or realistic? In my opinion, it's not. It's a little bit much. And here's why I think that. The overall global AI market size in 2022 was estimated to be somewhere between 150 and $450 billion. First, the wide variations on those estimates lends to the brand new nature of this market. Usually you have a better estimate of what's going on in the market, and it's not threefold difference from top to bottom. Growth per year has been estimated to be anywhere from less than 20% per year, which is impressive, to as much as 37% per year, which would be obviously way more impressive. Again, it's a really wide range that the analysts have, and it shows that you have a market that's very nascent. It's very brand new. People really don't know what to make of it. So if we were to take a look at the U.S. market, the range in 2022 for automated AI,
there you go, much easier, yeah.
much easier, would be between $50 and $150 billion. In 5 years, assuming 20% growth, the total AI market, so this is all applications of AI, would put the U.S. market somewhere between 125 and 375 billion by the end of 2027.
Mm-hmm.
Having one company increase $600 billion by the end of 2024 for a U.S. market or even a global market that would be no more than 500 billion to $1 trillion seems to be a little bit much, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that I'm down on this, though. I'm very bullish on what Dojo does. The asymmetric, how do he put it? An asymmetric advantage. That's simply his way of saying Tesla has some advantage that nobody else has, and nobody else is going to be able to get anytime soon. That is real, and I think that is going to definitely drive Tesla value once full self-driving is available. Let's see what that end result is. If that end result does come to fruition, then all bets are off. And it might be that this estimate's low. Until I see that end result a little bit closer than what it is now, though, I'm a little bit of a skeptic.
that Tesla has very ambitious plans to fund this project, and they're talking about $1 billion in investment throughout the next year to develop this capability. And the thing that really intrigued me was, let's see, we'll go to, yeah, there we go. And they say this is not intended to be just limited to Tesla cars, the application of Dojo, full self-driving. But here's where it got really interesting, and this is probably something we'll do on our AI podcast as well. They can appreciate the rate at which the Tesla neural net is learning to drive. Now suddenly visions came of cars not only talking to the human occupants in the car, but communicating with each other, communicating with the mothership or this Dojo computer. AI learning what it does best is learning road conditions, how to avoid certain types of accidents, and becoming much smarter about full self-driving. And it looks like a computer like this is, in development for this type of application.
Well, and possibly in production since July as well. And to your point, what do we have? 5 million Teslas on the road right now that communicate back to their mothership on a regular basis.
Right.
So it's not like there's no data being fed back to Tesla already. Then it's a very, very interesting take. Plus the take that Morgan Stanley made and even Elon has said in the past, Tesla's not a car company.
Yeah.
Tesla is so much more than just a car company. Cars are one of the many things that they're going to sell. But in the future, Tesla is probably going to be more of a software and technology and sustainable energy company than they are going to be just a car company.
Sure. And, that's already evident in all the other types of industries that they're in. They talk about their storage, their energy storage is also has a very bright future in terms of, adding revenue to the company.
Yes, most definitely.
So there you have it. That's the story on the Dojo computer for what we have so far.
Yeah, it's I would like for us maybe to try to remember to revisit this story around the end of this year. See what has happened with Dojo. See if there is another iteration of full self-driving that has come out that actually works better than what is out there right now. The initial response seemed, from Elon to talk when he talks about it, he's pretty excited. He's like, yeah, I can, take my hands off the wheel and just kind of go do my thing.
I've always been fascinated by the notion that cars have changed drastically. It used to be that a car was, it was an island. It was not connected to anything, but these Teslas, they're actually nodes on a network, and the amount of data collection that is possible and maybe taking place is unprecedented. That mothership, as we call it in Fremont, is aware where every car is, what it's doing, how fast it's going, where it's parked, how many times it goes to a particular restaurant. Temperature, all of that type of sensing. And with cameras, even the visuals around it. Now you feed all that into AI and you build this gigantic data set. And it has all kinds of applications.
Yeah. I think the most challenging thing for AI, and they talk about it a little bit in here, is the corner cases. And corner cases meaning those one-off type of incidents that maybe occur one time in 1,000 miles of driving. How many times have you driven in the Phoenix area and had to swerve to avoid a deer?
Right. Yeah.
You never do.
Yeah. It's
how many times
in New York State? It's rampant.
Yeah. How many times in upper New York State are you going to have to avoid a deer in the evening? Maybe a lot. But that's a corner case. And getting AI to learn how to react to stuff like that is going to be where the real benefit to the drivers are, because now you've got AI that might be more intelligent and better skilled to handle an incident that a driver may not have ever seen in their driving life, even though they may have driven for 10 or 20 years.
Mm-hmm. And the predictive analysis telling the other vehicles now in that area that that event had just occurred. There's a deer that you know, could potentially come out again. I just thought of another cool application. What about radar cops? The car could tell you where that radar cop is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're smiling. I think he likes it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially if, like, what was it? That Southern California community that went to Tesla Model Ys for their cop cars.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Yep, another application. Boy, we've got a bunch of questions coming in. All right, YouTube. Ed is with us now. Ed Prelitz. He says, "How many lines of code are in a Tesla car?" You know that?
3,000.
3,000?
I don't know. I went ahead and reading the question ahead. I looked ahead. Here's a guess from Quora.
Mm-hmm.
That very famous question and answer website.
So addicting too.
It is. Oh my gosh!
I
it's
can't
terrible.
get through my email. Every morning I come in, I say, I'm not going to do Quora this morning. And a question comes up, and sometimes it's a bot, you know, it was just fed in there. But yeah, I'm addicted.
It's terrible. It's terrible. I had to get off of Quora for that same reason.
Sounds like we might need a 12-step program for you, Pete.
Probably, yeah.
Let's say you had 100 coders, which and there were 5 years of coding, 12 months out of that 5 years. So 6,000 lines of code. Basically, multiply all that, you come up with about 36 million lines of code. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be quite that high, but I think you're going to be into a few million lines overall.
Elon is at the beginning of August was on Twitter. He was saying that the updates with this Dojo computer are going to take it from about 300,000 lines of C++ code and reduce it by 2 orders of magnitude. So there's going to be only a few thousand lines of code left once the AI takes over.
Okay. Now, the question is, how many lines of code did it take to program the Dojo computer?
To build the neural network? Yeah, that's a good question.
And I won't know that. But yeah, so that 36 million lines of code on Quora, that seems high. You know, instead you would want to take a look at the subsystems that are on each of the cars. To give you a rough example, we have an accounting system, an enterprise resource planning system. So it has inventory, general ledger, accounts receivable, payroll, accounts payable, sales orders, purchase orders, you know, your kind of your basic stuff. It runs about 500,000 lines of code total.
Really? I did not know that. SPT.
Yeah, we call it, it's SPT. That runs, and that's not a terribly sophisticated accounting system. So having over 1 million lines of code in all of the CAN bus systems in a car, not necessarily unreasonable. Yet at the same time, like to Jesse's point, once that stuff is compiled down and put into modules, it may be that there's quite a bit less code.
Well, I'm going to defer to you software guys. By the way, Jesse and Mark, they're software people here as well.
Mark, a little bit more than I am. He's been the one maintaining those 500,000 lines of code to keep our very old accounting system functioning.
Not that old, is it? I feel old now.
I think it's older than. I think it's actually
It's younger
older
than me.
I think it's older than I am. Yeah,
older than you are. Okay, well that's very young. Yeah.
I'm not going to comment on that.
So YouTube, Niles, okay, is back with us. Does Dojo mean that the cars will constantly learn as they go, rather than after version updates?
Yes, the cars will be learning. That's the whole point of a neural network, is that they build their own repository of knowledge and pull from that and generate their own answers from that. It's much like the ChatGPT and some of the other large neural nets that are out there.
So are we now saying that Tesla may not need as many programmers in the future, and their jobs are in jeopardy? I mean, this is the fear that, you know, I just had to throw that out there.
Yeah, you can't not say that. I mean, I
think, work in a kitchen.
I think back, okay, in the early days of the PC, IBM put out a what they called a low-powered PC back in the day. It was called the PC Junior, and one of my roommates, a brilliant guy, wrote an AI program and it took him, a couple hundred lines of code, and he had a little maze, and the dot was your artificial intelligence, and the dot learned that if it ran into a wall, it got hurt, and if it was able to keep going, it could eventually find food, and that would make it feel better. Eventually, the point here is this whole maze, this whole thing, a few hundred lines of code.
Mhm.
And he had a functioning program that learned over time to avoid the walls of this video maze.
Mhm.
I thought it was a fascinating thing, and this is back in 1985, 1986.
Mhm. Early
So-
AI, it sounds like.
It was
yeah.
very early AI. Considering the kinds of things you can do in today's computers, we're light years.
So Niall says, if full self-driving works and gets approved, what take rate do you think there will be at $15,000? Guesses?
It's gonna depend a lot on the quality of full self-driving.
Probably, yeah.
There are early adopters that have bought into it. Some of them bought into it clear back in the early days when it was a $2,000 add-on and not a $15,000 add-on. And now there are still people they're buying the hype, they're buying the hope for the future. But some of those people from early on have been waiting for 7 or 8 years and still haven't gotten their full self-driving.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's out there, I'm going to say single-digit percentages. It's going to be a low percentage early on of people who take it, but that doesn't mean that full self-driving is only going to apply from a learning standpoint to those people who have it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to learn from everybody who drives a Tesla, and then the results of that learning are going to go back out to the people who have purchased the full self-driving add-on.
And then, of course, there are people like me that like driving and will not relinquish and trust the machine to do the driving for them.
Yeah.
And that's a generational thing, I think, more than anything.
The other thing too, Pete,
Yeah.
I think that the $15,000 price tag is going to change. Elon Musk has stated that his goal is to make Tesla more of an AI company and to also get rid of the steering wheel at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that right now a lot of that cost is what's driving the development of it. And I believe that we could see a time when it's just a part of the car, and they're not charging for it once it's actually finished and developed. And Elon wants to achieve that mission. I don't see, the way he's reducing prices in cars and doing other things, I don't see him, keeping that a high price point for forever.
Sure, as they reach scale of economies, and
Yeah,
bet it becomes
I'm not
sustainable.
sure I would ever see it be free as just a feature of the car, but I could see it definitely going way down in price. And the only reason I don't see it being free is that there's always going to be some sort of residual cost to maintain and continue to build the AI.
Yeah. There's a follow-up question from Niles. He says, same question for robo-taxi use. In essence, how many will allow strangers into their self-driving cars?
We already do that, though.
How's that?
Well, there's an app out there called Toro that we've actually looked at before when we've flown into different cities. And what happens is the owner of the car can put their car on this app, and they can actually drop it off at a destination, or you can come and pick it up, and you can drive it around for the weekend or whatever duration it is, and then drop it back off, or they can come and pick it up from you. So it kind of feels like that's already happening too. Same thing with Uber drivers. You're just the one doing the driving instead of them taking over your vehicle. But
Mhm.
it kind of feels like we're slowly already going over there.
Good point. Yeah.
I think it's a great point. One of the things I think Tesla is trying to do when they look at the $25,000 car is to develop a low-cost car with some sort of full self-driving and use that car itself as a robotaxi. Kind of like what we have here in Phoenix with Waymo. And there are a couple of different metro areas here in the state that or in the nation that have that.
Mm-hmm. Now, a question from Nolver53. If Tesla is successful in bringing in this $25,000 EV, do you think that it will force other automakers to follow? Well, without a doubt, competition.
I think a lot of it's going to depend on the quality of the car. Yes, I think it's going to do some forcing of automakers to follow. it's not just Lucid and Rivian and Tesla, for that matter, that started with the high price cars when they started their brand. If you take a look, Ford, General Motors, other traditional ICE vehicle manufacturers, they do skew toward the higher cost, good selling vehicle as their highest production value and what gets all the best features first. Look at the full size pickup truck here in the United States. It's of the full size pickup truck and the large SUV tends to bring in more money for the automakers than any other car. So they tend to build more of the large pickup trucks and full size SUVs as a result.
The endless quest for profitability when it's not there yet, and survival.
Yeah, it really is. So will, for example, Lucid or will Rivian or somebody like that come out with a low cost car? I think that will happen eventually, but I don't think it will happen until they've got themselves financially set and stable.
Yeah, good point. George is joining us from YouTube. Good morning, fellas. Good morning to you as well.
Good morning, George.
Looks like George has another comment. He says, which one is older, Mr. Pete or the Gruber accounting computer system? And how do you write code for wooden nickels? No, that's a good one. Well, I can tell you that our software is definitely a spring chicken, but it is older than Jesse. So it's all relative. What we use, by the way, is a Visual Fox Pro-based software package in two different areas, unrelated initially. We have a CRM, Telemagic, which is Visual Fox Pro, and then SBT, which was a full-featured accounting package. This stuff was state-of-the-art in the 80s.
It was in the 80s. And one of the things... Yes. One of the things you guys probably don't realize, if you were to go to work for virtually any of the large banks in the United States, the code base you would be modifying, changing, maintaining over time would mostly be 70 and 80-year-old COBOL code written in the written anywhere from the 1950s to the 1970s. So I guess anywhere from 70 to about 50 years old, not 80 years. And the reason that code is still out there, billions and billions of lines, it works. It just works.
And the cost of conversion is prohibitive in many cases.
Yes.
You know, we've always been, we've received pressure from the younger guys. Why don't you just upgrade the software? It'll be faster, better. It's not really. We have such a high degree of customization in our software. To recreate that would be enormous amounts of downtime. In fact, you've mentioned it. We'd have to map it first. And then we'd have to have teams of programmers that would, that would create this newer version. But the biggest barrier in my mind is the adoption. It took us years, decades to get our people to use the software properly. Yeah. And the learning curves, definitely play into it. We had a company in our neighborhood. It was called Arrayed. And what they used to do was make emulation hardware for old type hardware like disk drives and tape drives. And the reason they were able to have a business that centered around this was because there were so many companies that just did not find it cost effectively feasible to upgrade their hardware. We're talking about old production lines, for example, where there's custom software and it's a low-tech, basically, production line, but it's computerized. It just didn't make sense financially to upgrade. So this company actually created emulation hardware that slowed things down and made it look like the old hardware, and they were very successful doing it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And
but the bottom line, like you said, the reason was it works.
Yeah, it works. And at least in the accounting side, I've told my accounting people and anyone who will listen, look, I can look at the latest and greatest thing today. And it's not that I wouldn't like to do that. I would love to go to more current software. But 80 to 90% of what we do, our current software does right now. And the new software will do the same thing that our current software does. It's the extra 10 to 20% of bells and whistles that make people want to just ache to go forward. if what we have is working, then it's a really large disincentive toward moving forward.
Yeah.
Mark, I did want to vouch for you on that comment about the banking system using that old code. Yeah, we had at Vanguard, we had this old system that was a DOS system that literally everything ran off of. And at some point in my tenure there, I think it was a few years in, we were running a pilot program for some kind of update for something, and I asked, "Why are we still using this? What doesn't make any? It doesn't make any sense." And they're like, "It works." Like, it works, and we don't want to break it, so that's why we're leaving it.
That's right.
But all of the systems, all of the departments, from personal investors to institutional investors, all utilize that same DOS system.
Fascinating stuff, and we've really deviated from our EV,
the
topics, but I think it's cool stuff. Yeah,
I was going to say, I
we're
feel
getting good
personally
engagement.
attacked.
Yeah. It looks like Niles is chiming in. He says, Jesse, and this is a question for you, Jesse. You going to answer this and read it? Go for it.
Hold on, I can't. Miles?
Yeah.
Jesse, isn't the ChatGPT instance over a year old? It does not learn on the fly, and I'm not sure Dojo will do that either. It's the major thing we are missing. I meant if FSD works perfectly. The goal is to have FSD be able to learn. I'm not sure that it's exactly like ChatGPT. And for the record, ChatGPT, the only reason it doesn't learn on the fly is because they don't let it. It's not because it's not capable of it. They have a certain training set that they've used so that they don't release it to the public with unknown, unintended consequences, which is why they removed that one feature where it could browse the internet and learn as it went. So it does have that capability to learn and absorb new material, but they turned that off because it was having copyright issues and a bunch of other issues. So the feature is there for AI to learn and learn very well. It's just not open to the public.
I think the biggest uproar, or one of the biggest ones, was it was able to go behind paywalls, subscription type services.
Right. Yeah, I was able to just go crawl the internet, and somehow it was getting around everything. So, yeah.
All right. YouTube Highlander says, "Hey guys, just found out that my neighbor bought a white Model X a month ago. Yeah, that's a pretty cool car. We have issues with it here in Phoenix. Black Model X's in full sunlight tend to affect the gull wing doors, or the ability for them to open, at least on the hot side. But other than that, it was it's a pretty cool car, especially at Christmas time when they turn on the music and the thing actually dances and the lights blink, and it does Mannheim Steamroller, and I forget what tune it is that it plays.
Oh, that I'm gonna have to look up a video of that. I've heard about the lights. The lights will go off and do and synchronize to music. If the doors are doing that as well, that's pretty cool.
It almost looks like a bird slowly flying when it does that. George, he says, and look at that Mark's shirt. It almost matches the background again. Thank you. George is our fashion expert, and he typically looks for things like this. And you're right. You look at Mark's shirt and you look at that chair behind him, and it's just a slightly different color.
Yeah, and the clouds in the background are the same color. And am I really here, or am I just another part of the AI?
Oh, that's a good question. And the conspiracy theorists that are wondering why we wear sunglasses are going to have a field day with that one.
Yes.
George also says on YouTube, robo-taxis are going to need vinyl rear seat covers and a vinyl floor instead of carpet, and leather, since it's going to take a beating being a taxi. Maybe Gruber should invent taxi rubber floor mats and a seat.
George has a good point there, and that's one of the bigger arguments against the robo-taxi and the full self-driving and stuff like that. How much do people care about things that they don't own?
Yeah.
And at least here in the United States, people tend to not care as much about other stuff as they care about their own stuff.
And the word abuse enters in there somewhere. They tend to abuse things worse if they don't own them, not theirs.
Yes, they do.
The whole robo-taxi concept, although there's a financial benefit, I can foresee people taking car payments that they can't afford if they're able to get the loan, and then subsidizing that by renting out their car with a robo-taxi type application to help them make the payments.
Yeah, I could see that. And I could even see somebody going out and buying 2 or 3 cars so that they have some car of some sort 24/7 being a robo-taxi.
Mm-hmm.
And they have some car of some sort that they are able to drive, and then they have that interim car that's kind of in the middle. And between the 3, they're getting enough money coming in to pay for all 3 cars.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Well, you see, if everybody does that, though, nobody's going to need a taxi.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't think of that. That's a good point. Depends on the quantity, I guess.
So, Highlander on YouTube says, now Oregon, Ohio has 4 Teslas. Still need to wrap all of the Jeeps that run around as Teslas. And then, as his saying is, kindness is always free.
Very true. YouTube, Seth Love says, Tesla Model 2 is coming soon. All right. George is saying the bearded guys weren't even born when Gruber account program was hand crank started in the 80s. Yeah, we got a bunch of bearded guys over there that are younger.
Yes. That's, it is what it is.
You're excluding our new team member. We have one that's not a bearded guy.
That's right.
Oh,
That's
Cass.
right.
See, I can't see her. Mark's in the way. I got to get used to that. You see
I
that?
too have a beard.
Oh.
No.
George says, did I miss Rich's sunglasses case commercial? No, you didn't miss it. It hasn't happened yet, but you've probably prompted him to do so.
Yep, there you go.
Yep, you sure did. Well, thank you for bringing that up, George. So I've got too many sunglasses and nowhere to store them. Well, luckily, we have these sunglass case holders. They're sold for $79.99 on the Gruber Motor Company website unless you use code Richard, in which case you get 10% off. I think there's another code that you can use.
Yes, it's code Aaron, AARON.
Okay.
But code Richard will work better. That's just the case,
Mine's easier to type.
So we've done the commercial portion of our show.
There we go.
I'm always wondering when I pick up like my iced tea or something like that. And I'm not doing this intentionally, by the way, for product placement. But I think eventually as this thing gains momentum, we're going to get offers from companies that want us to do product placement. So you may conspicuously see a logo on my cap or my hat, or maybe something on my shirt at some point in time. So for those companies out there that want to throw lots of money at us for product placement, we're listening at this point.
That's right.
Liquid Death.
Liquid Death.
Liquid Death would be a nice one.
There we go.
No free product placement, though, so no more mentions.
Okay.
Michael Aldea has an interesting take here on YouTube. He says, the way you guys think of accounting software is the same way the big auto companies thought about electric cars.
Ah, thank you for that. Thank you for that point.
Okay.
I can't really argue that, though, because what we're saying about the accounting software is, okay, well, it works. It does everything we need it to do. And that is kind of what they thought about the old ICE vehicles back in the 90s, when that's kind of what the General Motors was saying. Hey, we got something that works. Why do we need to go somewhere else? The thing is, you're not going to reduce your carbon footprint and emissions in the world by going to a new piece of accounting software.
So if we didn't have global warming, are you saying, Michael, that we may not ever have electric cars? One could draw that conclusion, could one not?
Possible.
Thank you, Michael. George is saying, oh no, we already did that one. All right. Instagram, don't blink 101, too expensive with self-driving taxi. I don't know what the numbers are yet. I don't know what that...
Yeah, I don't know. I'm one of those people that would not put my car on Turo because I would be too concerned about that car coming back trashed.
Yeah. When I worked for Digital, we used to go out of town often, and we would get rental cars. And I assure you that the care that we took of those rental cars was nowhere near our personal cars. I remember one guy actually took one four-wheeling one day, and when we took that back to Hertz, they were suspicious that the car just wasn't right. There were some additional rattles and, possible dings in the car, but Yeah, it's a concern. You definitely take better care of your personal items than you would someone else's, especially with something like a car.
Yeah, definitely.
TikTok Van Goat Wagon says, "What's wrong with beards? Code free works for me. I'm also available for product placement. Hint, hint, Pete. Okay, some product placement.
Definitely. And George on YouTube says Tesla needs to program the robo-taxi cars to only open the back doors and maybe the front passenger door for taxi pickups.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
like they do with cop cars.
Yeah.
Not that I've ever been in one, mind you, but what do you guys chuckling?
That sounds exactly like somebody who's been in the back of a cop car would say, Pete.
I watch a lot of television. Instagram McNasty3 says, "So many amps. What are the safety thing?"
That was as typed, by the way.
Okay, all right. Actually, speaking of amps, I have in my hand here, and this is going to be in the Friday show. This thing is extremely heavy. It feels like a solid piece of steel. It is actually a semiconductor from the last century. And what this is it's a thyristor, or a silicon-controlled rectifier. And that was before they had large power IGBT transistors that are able to take a small input like a sine wave and convert it to high amperage output. What they did with these SCRs, they made what was called a step wave rectifier, which would turn on dozens of these to replicate basically a stair step and then eventually come back down, which was in the shape of a stair step sine wave. And then it filtered, and that's how they did conversion from DC to AC. These things used to cost $511, extremely heavy. Hear that thing? There it is. And it's just cool old technology. We've come so far.
Definitely is.
$511 back in the day for one of these, and literally dozens of those, and a gigantic heat sink that it was mounted to with a lot of thermal paste because the thing was switching a couple thousand amps.
You know, Pete, whatever language you were speaking there at the beginning, I don't know if our audience fully understands.
You know, somebody else said that yesterday. It's just, it's a natural language for me. But I'll bet there are going to be some people that pipe up here and say, yeah, I used to work on that, or I know what he's talking about.
Sure.
Niles is saying, "I still don't think current models can learn on the fly like brains do because the retraining is so compute intensive, but they are probably working on it."
That is, I think that's actually true, Niles. The ability of our brain to sense and react to new stimulus, and our ability to quickly process information and make decisions that are reasonable and good based on that new input that we've never seen before is just, it's truly amazing. I believe the Dojo computer is going to approach something like that. It's not the only one that's going to.
And of course, it's receiving inputs from all these cars continuously.
That's what I was going to say,
Yeah.
Pete. You and I have talked about on the AI podcast. When one learns it, they all learn it. That's the difference about how much more powerful AI is than.
Yeah.
We may not be able to interpret it the same way, or the computer may not be able to interpret it the same way, but it's learning at a much larger scale, much faster.
Yeah, when we get into the arenas of things like quantum computing, right now computing as we know it is ones and zeros. Either you have an electrical signal and it's a 1, or you don't have an electrical signal and it's a 0. Quantum computing, you have that same bit could have as much as 20 different states or even more. And so you don't have a 1 or a 0. You have, which is a binary numbering system. So every bit of electricity has just that one state, either on or off. When you go to quantum computing and you can have, even if it's just 20 states, you do 20 to the second power is 400, to the next power is 8,000. 3 bits could have 8,000 combinations.
Mark, the other thing too, really quick, is that those 20 states can happen individually or simultaneously or in variations of. It can be in multiple states at one time. It's not either on or off or one of the 20. It's any basically infinite combination of all of them.
Yeah. So quantum computing is it's going to be the elegant solution where our computing power right now is just brute force, and you can see what's happening with the brute force computing.
Right.
It's really amazing.
And for those of you coming in late, we are talking about EVs. We're talking about full self-driving. We're talking about AI in cars. So this is really consistent with our podcast.
Yeah, make sure to check out our Sunday podcast.
Yeah. Sunday's even more interesting when we get into AI stuff. Actually lost one subscriber last Sunday, but I did talk about the Pope, and that might have been what triggered that. George is saying, he says, Mr. P talking about public placement of products. How about Gruber Motors shirts so that the fans can wear them to promote your business? You guys got an update for us there? Oh, usually the update is we're working on it. We've got some shirts. They're going to be on the store soon. Is that not happening today?
No, we're still waiting on working with our shop manager, who also moonlights as a t-shirt maker. So,
all right. And it'll be a shirt that looks like this. It'll have the Gruber Motor logo on it. Fridays, for the AI podcast, I think I was wearing the Gruber Company shirt. We've got 3 or 4 of them here. So
yeah, I know that we're working with them to get several shirts out.
So George is also saying Robo Roadster Taxi. Now, I would not let my Roadster out into a robo-taxi environment. It's just too much fun to drive, and way too much can happen. And, they're so low to the ground. If you don't know how to go over, things like speed bumps or even pulling into a driveway, you can scrape the bottom of that Roadster pretty badly. So
yeah, definitely can. A Highlander on YouTube says, I watched Sandy's video, and I was impressed that he could even lift that hammer.
All right, Sandy, there's one for you. If you're watching, there was a comment that I think you'll enjoy. He freely admits, he says, I'm an old guy. What was it in his last rant? He says, I'm old, but I got to tell you, this one really ticks me off. It was about that small municipality. They had a public meeting, and people were upset that they were considering putting in a solar type installation because it would rob sunlight and take something away from them.
And take sunlight from the plants and the environment in town.
Yeah, and he said that the word that comes to mind for him was the word ignoramus.
Yeah.
All right, Highlander says, I don't understand that reference, Rich. He's really talking about George, by the way. George is our YouTube faithful, and his handle is Watch Rich Rebuild's channel, because before he became our devotee, he was definitely a Rich Rebuild's channel regular. Or maybe he still is, George. Let us know. Do you still participate on Rich's stuff?
Yes. And that reference might be the reference that he's talking about, that $511 piece makes a nice coffee coaster for your desk.
Yeah.
Now that's, again, this guy here. What do you think? 2 pounds for this?
At least, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little more. So, it looks small, but you put that on drill that out a little bit and put it on a pole, and you got a dumbbell here. It's definitely got some weight to it.
Yep. And cool old technology. It's for those of you that appreciate engineering excellence. This sort of this is the evolution of electronics, high power switching, and semiconductors in general.
Yeah, definitely is.
All right. YouTube, again, George says, talking about code. Who is a 1 and who is a 0? You guys are number 1 to me. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And you are too, George. In fact, you could even be a number 10 to us because you're so faithful to our podcasts here. Van Goatwagon on TikTok says, the Roadsters have a big old skid plate on the bottom, don't they? LOL. They do, but it's so low to the ground, you've got other stuff, like oftentimes there's a carbon fiber lip, and those get beat up badly because they're so low, and when you have a little bit of incline going into your driveway, those will scrape in a heartbeat.
Yeah, those Roadsters, having sat in one a couple times, I know you sit in them regularly. I think the top of the seat that you sit on is only about 5 inches off the ground.
It is. And one other thing that, if I can mention this, I think that a Roadster might sag a little bit more with you in it than it would with me. Would that be fair to say?
I think that'd be fair to say.
Okay.
I definitely think that'd be fair to say.
Yeah, they only weigh, 2,700 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, about that. I think it's maybe a little more, and definitely a little more with me in it.
yes. Instagram, Harpreet_Singh 1984 says, hello, sir. Well, thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Highlander from YouTube, the robots will make the stock market worth it, in my opinion. I've been wrong before, though.
Yes. And BizWait, I think we just scrolled that one off the screen. Have we read that one already?
I don't think so. No.
No. On Instagram, BizWait Nyack says, I've worked on my business, but I have more interest in technology, but don't know where to go. Oh, man. Where do you even start on that?
Yeah, I think I've got an email from you as well, sir. And my suggestion was continue with the educational process you're on if you're going into the double E field, because if you want to get into electric vehicles, that's a far more valuable education than learning how to change brakes and tires and low-tech auto. And software, of course, along with that. As we mentioned, do we think Linux is going away anytime soon?
No.
Do we think that CAN signals for cars are going away anytime soon? And the fundamental reason is it works.
Linux is based on the Unix code, and that's 1969.
Yeah, open source.
So I was not around when Unix was created.
Really?
I was not. So that's Unix was created in the early 60s, and the first full release from Berkeley was mid 1969, and I was a little bit later than that.
What a great concept, open source.
Yeah.
So got some. We have a news item here for you. Apparently, Stellantis recently opened a state-of-the-art 40 million euro battery plant in Italy. Doesn't sound like a lot of money. I mean, these days, if you don't hear billion after some money, it's not a lot of money anymore. But 40 million euros. And so anyway, they are going to be making batteries in the Mirafiori complex in Turin, Italy. And this happens to be one of the largest battery plants in Europe. I was surprised. You'd think they would have something bigger than that, but it spans 8,000 square meters. And Stellantis earlier this year opened an automotive cells company battery plant in Billy-Berclau, Douvrin, France. I probably pronounced that incorrectly. Love to hear anybody from France correct me on that one. Stellantis also announced that they would be introducing a $27,000 battery electric vehicle in 2024, and 100% BEV, and it will be around the same time as the Volvo EX30 and the Volkswagen ID.2. They feel that this BEV would also likely hit the market around the same time as Tesla's $25,000 vehicle launch, which we spoke about earlier. There's a lot of mystique around that, but if these vehicles can get down into the mid-20s, even low 20s, we feel that a much more rapid EV adoption rate will begin to take place, because now it's going to be less expensive than your average ICE vehicle.
I totally agree with that. Now, Jesse, there's a picture out there called the Citroen OLI concept. And that is the 27,000 battery electric vehicle that Stellantis is working on. This is the concept version of it. I think they're going to streamline it somewhat. This particular vehicle is going to have about 186 miles of range. And to start with, because it's a Citroen brand, it's going to be a Europe-only release.
Really?
So I can't wait to see more of these affordable EVs in the U.S. I know, for example, Volvo and their EX30, they're taking reservations already on that. I believe Volkswagen is also doing that with the ID.2. Those are definitely slated for U.S. release. This one is slated mainly for a Europe release at this point.
And it looks small and narrow, which is exactly what you need to drive in Europe.
Yeah, it's definitely an intriguing car. I can't wait to see more of these come out. Like we were talking about early in the podcast, getting these lower end vehicles, I think, is going to be the push that people need to start having widespread adoption. We're starting to see the adoption rates tick up in places like California, where they've got the extra government incentive that are pushing prices down below that $25,000 rate. And I believe that's going to happen here in the rest of the U.S. as we get more of these cars out there.
Very cool.
Cool thing about this car, I watched a video on it not too long ago, and the panels are made out of a recycled cardboard that's packed together so that it is extremely tough.
Cool.
That's very cool.
It looks like George is chiming in. He says, Rich Rebill's show will be on later today. Here's what I suggest to you, George. Temporarily change your handle to Watch Gruber Morning Show and see how Rich responds to that. And if, by the way, you can remind him, we're still trying to get that podcast and that collaboration going with him. I think it'd be a lot of fun having him on our show.
I think it'd be a great time.
All right. And then Highlander says, okay, will do. Instagram, Coco2511. He says, hello, what is the topic? You know, we've really moved around a lot today. It is usually electric vehicles, Tesla-related, other brands at times, but we got into some serious rabbit holes that we chased down, and it was all technical, all related to EVs, and the intriguing notion of having neural network cars that are actually talking to each other, talking back to a Dojo computer, and what the ramifications and implications of that broad communication style would have and do.
On YouTube, George has come back again. It says, thanks to Mark for having his car plugged in with the AC on to cool the climate of the planet. Thanks to Mark, it's down to 79 degrees here on the northeast coast. Now, George, I have to tell you one thing. I left my windows rolled up today.
Oh, you did? Okay. So in that scenario, he would actually be contributing to the global warming because all of that heat transferring from the cabin goes out into the
That's right.
ambient.
That's right.
So I think you're safe.
I think I'm safe
Yeah,
for
you're
today.
not cooling anything today. YouTube, George says, look at and hit the like button before almost 10 other people did. Well, thank you. Yeah, that helps us. Now, what about Niles? He's talking to you there, Mark.
Actually, Niles makes a good point here. He says, Mark, there's no Unix code in Linux. It's just a Unix-style system. Well, I do know that Linus Torvalds, when he created Linux, he based it on a Unix platform, but he basically wrote that code himself. Many things between Linux and Unix, the older, there are other types of flavors out there of the code base. The original Unix system, which was written in 1969, is not what Linus Torvalds put out in Linux. The Linux system is from the early 2000s.
Okay. All right. So it's it's newer than Unix.
Yes, it is a little bit newer than Unix.
YouTube, William R. says, appreciate your YouTube channel and expert knowledge of EVs, clean power, and Tesla. Yeah, thank you. We tend to talk about the things that we know and try to stay away from the things that we don't.
Yeah, we do our best there.
TikTok, OCD Auto, he says, how old is Gruber? The company. Okay, so me personally, I'm 72, and the company was founded in 1983. And we're doing some additional typing there, so I can't quite read yet. There we go. He says, Onboard Diagnostic 3 is a plan for 20 years to try and have cars report emission codes to DMV, or DVM, probably DMV.
Yeah, DMV, sorry.
DMV,
Yeah, okay. Okay, interesting. Hope we've answered the age question, and I am the oldest guy here, aren't I?
I think so. I turned 54 in August, so I was born in '69, just after the moon landing.
That's when I graduated, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. And I tell you, it was a fun time, guys. The 60s were crazy. We had hippies, we had all kinds of protests going on with the Vietnam War, and it was an exciting time to be alive. It really was.
If we could eventually pull that pull that senior prom picture of you back up. You can
Yeah.
see that Pete was almost a hippie with as long as his hair was.
Or you might have been interested in seeing me in my disco days. I used to have those platform shoes, and the
Oh,
polyester
goodness.
shirts, and I tried to fro one time. I had real fine hair, and it just didn't come off well. But yeah, that was the way to do it back then. Here comes Richard.
You got any pictures of that, Pete?
I don't really. It was the time before cell phones, and taking pictures was a laborious, long, and oftentimes expensive process.
Yeah.
You had to go find, or you had to go buy film, and then you get either 20 or 36 roll. Then you had to put it in the camera, and of course you didn't click off all the pictures right away because it wasn't that inexpensive, right? Then finally, when you clicked off all 20 or whatever, or 36, you had to take it down and get it developed, and you never knew what you were going to get. So it wasn't as convenient as what we do now, which is pick up your cell phone and go click.
So
Yeah.
what you're telling us is that there were no retakes. It was just you take your picture and you're done. Wow, I really wish it was still that way when I was a kid. My dad is a photographer, and the hours that we would sit during Christmas, Easter, all the holidays, brunch on a Tuesday, and just standing there. Oh no, that one didn't look right. Oh no, we got to redo it. Oh no, scoot this way, tilt your head a little bit, smile. What are you doing? You blinked. Oh my goodness, that would have saved us hours.
So you go back even before my time, and you literally had to freeze for about 3 to 5 seconds. You couldn't move because it would blur the picture, right? That's why people in those older pictures are never happy. They don't smile. They don't laugh. What you get is a poker face, basically. But isn't it amazing? I mean, you guys are young. In 100 years, look how far we've come.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
What makes me feel old is watching my 2-year-old granddaughter pull up her iPad, turn it on, go to YouTube, swipe, find the video she likes, play it for a little while. If she really likes it, she'll watch it. If she doesn't, she'll start swiping across the bottom again. And I'm thinking, can't even talk.
Right, you don't have any language skills yet. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're 2 years old, right?
You're barely 2 years old. You can't even hardly talk, and yet you can navigate perfectly
Yeah.
on an iPad. And I'm just like, oh man,
Exciting time to be alive.
it is.
TikTok, OCD Auto. Okay, we did that one. How old is Gruber?
Yep.
All right. YouTube Highlander, he said, I hit the little fist AGA. Is there a fist on the...
I think you might be saying the like button.
The like button. Okay. All right. YouTube Watch Rich Rebuilds. Again, George, he said, is anyone working on a system beyond Linux?
I'm not sure right offhand.
Don't know that either.
I'm going to venture a guess that there probably are people working on systems that are eventually to replace something like Linux. I just don't know right offhand.
Now, we've got Niles chiming in. He says, Mark, from the early 90s, I used the first versions on diskettes and have been Linux-based ever since.
Oh, Niles, you're my type of guy. Oh, now the first diskettes I worked on, very first ones were the 5 1/4 inch
Yes,
floppies.
they were this big, the floppy.
Yeah, they were about that big. Now I did work on the, I think there were 8 1/2 inch floppies.
Uh-huh.
And they were single-sided, and so they were about so tall by so wide, and they were the same floppy, vinyl material.
Like a long playing record versus a 45.
Except these did not. The 5 1/4 inch discs were more dense. It's almost like a CD to DVD type of
Right.
thing. So the 8 1/2 inch diskettes were for older systems. The 80186 that is not well known from Intel, and it only had about 160 kilobytes worth of storage space on that 8 1/2 inch floppy.
Right, right. So I go back to the age of punch cards, right? Stacks and stacks of them that would be feeding into a card reader.
Yes.
And the service technique there was a large rubber wheel that eventually got glazed over and it wouldn't grab the card. So we had this really harsh chemical that we used to wipe down the rubber wheel with, which made it sticky again. Then I worked on the PDP-8. They had paper tape readers.
Okay.
It was a fan fold, tape, and you
Yeah.
had a box of paper, basically,
Yeah.
that had literally little holes punched in it. And on a teletype, you were actually able to program and make those punches by feeding a blank paper tape into it,
Sure.
and it would punch out your code, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then came the little tape cartridges on the PDP-8. They were about 3 inches in diameter, but it was about an inch wide tape. Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't want to bore you guys. Probably boring people there. All right.
But it, good. A lot of that was just before my time. When I got in, the diskettes were just starting to be there. So George again asks, "Is this my living room in the background?" No, George. This is an AI picture again.
Yep, and the prompt, by the way, George, for those of you that missed it, was I asked AI to create a new studio on top of Mount Kilimanjaro with a 270-degree view showing the exterior or the outside.
Yeah.
TikTok OCD Auto, he says, check out the show Halt and Catch Fire. Oops, it just bled up, guys. I started on Amiga Commodore. Okay, that was a good old computer.
Yeah, the Commodore 16, the Commodore 64s, and then if you wanted video, you go to the Amiga.
Mm-hmm. YouTube Nolver53 says, have you ever heard of Phoenix Motor Cars? Now, I think they make EV buses and vans, but back in, I think it was 2007, they made or were trying to make a small EV truck called the SUT. It rings a bell. I'm not sure they're in business anymore, though.
That one's one I have not heard of myself.
Yeah. YouTube, George says, Niles, what's the next after Linux?
And Niles says, death.
Okay. George, again, okay, LOL. Highlander, let's not talk about those show 3s. Let's talk about going to the. I'm missing that. You guys, or is it mistyped, guys? Nope, he's checking it.
Talk about those shoes.
That was as typed, but maybe he's talking about shoes. I don't understand the context.
But the next one, Highlander, I completely get because that was my side hustle when I was a kid. He says, the grocery store to test your vacuum tubes for your TV. Exactly. It was usually the pharmacy type stores where you would go. You could take your bag of tubes. And by the way, one time I was doing a repair for a customer and I put them in a paper bag and it was icy. It was back east and I slipped and fell and I broke 3 of the tubes.
Oh.
And all my profit just went out the window at that point. But anyway, you would take your tubes, literally plug them into a tube checker inside the store. And then when you were done, somebody that knew nothing about tubes would come look at the number on it, like a 5Y3, for example, 50C5 or whatever. They would open the drawer, and inside were an array of tubes. And if you were lucky, they had the very tube that you needed.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go back, plug them all back in. There was a little chart inside on the back cover of a television or a radio or whatever it was that showed you the tube placement. It was a layout. And you plugged them back in, hope that you didn't cross your pins and bend them. And the next thing you know, that TV began to operate again, and you got paid.
That's something else. George on YouTube says, hey, Richard, maybe can we see a picture of one of your older family holiday pictures with you as a youngster?
Yeah, now that would be good.
That'd be pretty cool.
Well, I can bring one next show.
And I have to say this on air here. Richard's dad actually works with us now over in the A building in the comm group.
Yes.
And there is a resemblance there, except for all that facial hair you have now. Before you had that, I can see the resemblance clearly. I talked to him this morning, and he had a great idea. He said that the Priuses, apparently one of the universities was working on a design for the Prius pouch battery, and they were actually able to increase the range by doing something, and he wasn't sure what it was. But that would probably be a great concept.
Yeah, totally. And you should see pictures of he and I are on the same age. We'd look exactly the same.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Cool. All right. We got to have him on our podcast.
Yeah, we'll have to.
Yeah. Instagram, J.Higgins623 says, good afternoon, guys. Thank you for joining us. Highlander, he says, yes, my 2 niece and
Same thing.
I need a...
and that very well could be that he's referring back to the young children who know how to do so much.
Okay. Or the drugstore tube checkers.
Yes.
Well, we've got a bunch of questions streaming in. We might as well go through them all. I've got some more agenda items. We'll continue Thursday with that. Highlander says 11.5-inch discs, something IBM and punch cards. Yeah, that was old technology. Upstairs, I actually have some 9-inch tapes still that have Ristus on it, which is a digital version of a time-sharing software package that I got pretty good at, actually.
Wow, that's
Cool stuff.
I on my wedding day, I had to take a 9-inch tape deck for computers down to Mesa, drop it off with somebody who needed it, and then I came back and finished getting ready for the wedding.
TikTok, OCD Auto. Pick a scope in your shop. I use a lot on ice and can. I miss walking into Radio Shack. Yeah, I miss that too. That was a cool place.
Yeah.
Don't have a pick a scope, though. We have an oscilloscope and signal generators and
Among those. YouTube, McGow Danielle. Have a good day, everyone, and thank you. And glad that you watched with today.
Yep. Mr. Pete, can you ask AI background for a version of you and Mark as Muppets? Just like the Statler and Waldorf, LOL.
You know, I don't think AI would do that. We could ask, but they right now in their current iteration, they get kind of sensitive about looking for personal information like that.
Yeah, and what I've found is unless you're a well-known public figure where there are literally hundreds of thousands of pictures, AI has a difficult time personalizing any images, and I'm not sure there are enough of us out there yet, anyway, that it would be able to render anything, but we should give that a shot.
Yeah.
Instagram, McDowell Danielle, what's the difference from a Roadster and regular Tesla? Well, the Tesla Roadster is a Tesla, and it was the first production car that they made. It was actually a Lotus Elise that they electrified, and some miscalculations there. Only 7% of the Roadster today is Lotus Elise.
Yes.
Because they miscalculated the size of the battery and how it would fit into the frame. So they ended up changing the frame, all the body panels, but fortunately, they left the Lotus DNA in the car, which is a sports car vibe, 2-seater, unlike the 4-door grocery getter sedans that they began making after that. Now, if I sound bitter about that, I'm not. I love the Model S. I love all the other Teslas, but the Roadster is definitely a departure from the normal Tesla design. And honestly, I can't wait until they go back to that and they start making some really over-the-top hypercars.
Yeah, I really hope that they end up coming through and announcing near the end of 2024 the release date for the Roadster.
For the new, version 2 Roadster.
Yeah.
Highlander, yep, on the shoes and tubes in brown paper bags. Dad made his own tube tester, really, out of a 45 record player case. I guess you could do that because it's about the size of that, yeah.
Sure, that's because those 45 record cases, you know,
yeah.
16 inches wide, 16 inches deep, about 8 inches tall. Yeah, that'd be just about perfect size to do some of that tube testing with.
And, you know, they weren't that expensive in the day to purchase either. Allied Electronics, Lafayette Electronics, both offered versions of that. And I bought actually 2 variations of it so that I could do my own. I could take the equipment with me, and I didn't have to hoof it down to the drugstore or have the client drive me there.
Oh, sure. It totally makes sense because it's largely just putting a small electrical signal through the tube and see what comes out on the other end.
Yeah, within certain parameters, exactly. Yeah. TikTok, Banks, I really love your radio show. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
The podcast radio show, I guess this is what this has evolved into or migrated from. George is saying, I think Highlander fell off his keyboard mid-message from his last message. LOL.
Yeah, very possible, very possible. And we are getting to getting to close the show soon. We'll go ahead and get through the last of these questions, and we'll see everybody in a couple days after that. Omid Stardust says on Instagram, hello, do you know what kind of digital signal processor is used in the AC drives in Tesla cars? I'm a student in DSP. Thanks.
I don't know that off the top of my head. I don't know that.
That one I'm not sure of at all myself.
Probably something that could be Googled, though, I would suspect. TikTok, OCD Auto, do you think Tesla is supporter of right to repair? Yes, overall, very much so, because remember that Tesla is the one company in the tech field that is open to sharing their technology. And of course, they can't share everything. I mean, there's a lot of proprietary work that goes on, and they have legions of people involved in it. So, but in general, take a look at the NACS standard, for example. Now, granted, one might say, well, yeah, they shared it, but they're going to make a lot of money from it now that everybody's adopted it. But there are the fundamental Tesla culture that I'm familiar with, working with them now for years, is one very similar to Nikola Tesla. And unlike Thomas Alva Edison, who was in his later years a patent troll, he vigorously defended all of his patents, whether it was legitimate or not, and won a lot of court cases. Nikola Tesla gave his stuff away. His ideas, his concepts, the three-phase, the whole ideology behind it. And the people that I've talked to at Tesla, even upper management, it's more about transitioning the planet to a sustainable method of using energy, especially transportation, and saving the planet. And so they have their head in the right place. And it's almost karma that they've become this successful. Remember, this is a car company that 10 years ago was on the verge of bankruptcy. A number of times.
5 years ago was on the verge of bankruptcy.
With the Model 3 launch, exactly. And today, Elon's the richest man on the planet, and it's the largest car company on the planet. They're doing something right.
Well, they are, and I'm gonna, I know I'm gonna be recording something today with Jesse to that tune that Tesla has, doing some comparisons about what Tesla has been able to accomplish versus what some of the other automakers have been trying to accomplish. Both new in EV and, at least in one case, a traditional automaker that's been around for over 100 years.
Tesla reminds me of what we admonish our salespeople to do. Don't focus on profits. Don't focus on the revenue. Don't focus on the money. Take care of your customers.
Yeah.
Take care of their needs. The rest will follow. And it seems like that's been what Tesla has really demonstrated works. Now, speaking of this, you're going to be doing a video this afternoon. And I don't want to give away any of the key components of it, but we're really impressed with Mark's ability to do deep dives into financial issues. And it's going to be another one of those videos that I encourage everyone to watch. It's going to be out on our YouTube channel, and it does center around Tesla and what we predict Tesla is going to be capable of and what they're going to be migrating to.
Absolutely. So I look forward to that. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We'll be here tomorrow for the Tesla Roadster Roundtable at the same time, 10 a.m. Mountain Standard, Pacific Daylight Time. Thursday, we have this EV podcast again. Friday is the Power Hour, the Gruber Power Services Power Hour podcast. And then on Sunday, you guys have your AI podcast as well.
And Friday, by the way, the main host, Claude Dixon, is in the Virgin Islands right now on vacation. So I'm going to be filling in for him. And also Elvis will be here. So we have a good show planned for Friday morning, critical power and data centers.
It'll be a good time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.